I believe many of you heard about electric vehicles or electric cars. So they are cars that run or powered by electric motor. So we have seen lots of commercial advertisement or car events. They are promoting electric cars that are zero emissions and very clean and green for the environment. And that is true because electric cars are zero emission. It helps reducing air pollution and improving the air quality, but only the time that you are sitting in the car and driving it. What about behind the scenes? Are they really have nothing to do with pollution? Where is the power of the car and electricity came from? How to make or manufacture an electric cars? Or what about the production of that gigantic battery in your electric car? So today, I'm gonna argue about driving electric cars is just as harmful for the environment as driving traditional gasoline diesel car. First of all, when you are driving an electric car, which means you are using more electricity. So my point is, the increase of electricity usage required by the electric cars negatively affect the environment. According to the research from the Mobility, Logistics, and Automotive Technology Research Center, a battery-powered electric vehicles that use electricity generated by fossil fuel would emit slightly more emission over lifetime than a diesel-powered car. So the reason is because the pollution shifts from the car itself to power plants. And this is the information from 2016, which is 68% of the electricity generated in the United States is generated from fossil fuels, and half of that amount, which is 1/3 of the total electricity generated, comes from coal power plants. In some states, around 90% of electricity is produced from coal power plants. So if your electric vehicles is charged with electricity came from coal power plants, it is estimated to emit 15 ounces of carbon per mile. Actually, it's a full 3 ounces per mile more than a similar gasoline-powered vehicles. On top of that, power plants also produce solid waste such as mercury that it is harmful to human and animal health. My second point is the production of electric cars harm the environment. According to the study by the Fraunhofer Institute for Building Physics, it takes more than twice the amount of energy to produce an electric car as a conventional one. The Union of Concerned Scientists, which is a group that specializes in science for a healthy planet and safer world, they agree that for long-range electric vehicles such as Tesla, manufacturing emissions are 68% higher than conventional cars. The problem that makes electric cars so hard to make is because they need a lot of lightweight materials than traditional cars to get the balance of horsepower and electric usage. The last point is the battery that have negative effects to the environment. The battery production needs to more greenhouse gas emission. In 2013, the Environmental Protection Agency described these batteries as having the highest potential for environmental impacts, with lithium mining resulting in greenhouse gas emission, environmental pollution, and human health impacts. The last thing is the battery disposal problem, and the battery disposal reinforces pollution of chemical waste. So overall, driving electric cars is harmful as driving a traditional car to the environments because of the increased usage of electricity and production of the electric cars, and also the batteries that contain toxic chemicals that is hard to get rid of.
All right, at the beginning of the speech, the proposition's clear. There's a straightforward layout of what the secondary points are. You seem to be going opposite the trend, and you make reference to the fact that a lot of cars are being promoted as being environmentally sound, and that explains why we have to listen to your argument. So I think you're okay at the beginning of the speech. In the body of the speech, you signpost the supporting points pretty clearly, although your third point, I think, needs to have a stronger label on it. The first and the second point are labeled pretty clearly, and you have a good explanation on each of those points about why some of these problems exist. On the first point is mostly a shift from the point of pollution being the vehicle to the point of pollution being where the energy is manufactured. The information that you had at the beginning seemed to suggest that there is, the first quote that you had, there's slightly more emissions than diesel engines with the electricity being generated there. And then you had some more data about how dependent we are on fossil fuels to generate electricity in a number of places. That makes sense. And then the last piece of data that you had on that first point seemed to suggest that there's a 3-ounce difference per mile of pollution, and how that accumulates over time, I think, would be one of those things that you would want to point to. But if that's a sound piece of statistical information, then I think that that's a good summary of your argument. The other stuff seemed like it was being cited. I didn't really hear if that information came from the same source, so I was a little bit thin on that. On the second point, on the other hand, you do cite your information more consistently. You talk about what the expense is to produce the electric cars. You've got an explanation of what that was. I thought that was interesting because that was not something that I was aware of, that because the cars have to be lighter weight, that the manufacturing process is more polluting in the long run. That's an interesting concept. It's partially explained. The amount of pollution being estimated by the Union of Concerned Scientists seems to be pretty substantial, so it's not just the 3 ounces per mile that you're talking about on the first point, but at Gesundheit, it sounds like it's almost 2/3 more polluting than it is, on that second point than it was on the first point. And then the disposal problem comes up, but there's not really any explanation of it. You just kind of say what it is. And I think that that's a little bit problematic. I think you do have a pretty clear summary. You struggled a little bit on the exit line, and there's just a lot of reading. You need to talk to us more. All right, thank you.